Hi, my name is Hayden Frederick, and I'm a junior business administration major with a minor in kinesiology at Tarleton State University, located in Stephenville, Texas. But originally, I'm from the West Texas city of Odessa. So, what we're going to talk about today is hydraulic fracturing, or more commonly referred to as fracking in the oil and gas industry. We're going to kind of talk about what hydraulic fracking is, the pros and the cons, advantages and disadvantages that are associated with this new method of extraction of oil and natural gas from deep within the earth. So first off, what is hydraulic fracturing? Well, fracking is the process that takes place after a well has been drilled. Steel casing is dropped down the hole. Well, the steel casing is perforated in these areas that we're going to call target zones. And what a target zone is where the company men and the whalemen think that they're going to have the best luck and the best success at extracting oil and natural gas from the earth. Once this casing has been dropped, a high pressured fracking fluid is injected into these target zones. But what is fracking fluid? Well, fracking fluid is a mix of water, propants, which is usually ceramic beads or sand, and chemicals. Now, fracking fluid is a high pressured liquid that is suspended in water and is sent down hole. It fractures the rock or shell, and the propants hold the cracks open during the flowback process. So we have a general idea of what hydraulic fracturing is. So we're going to move forward and look at the drilling process. What happens really when we drill an oil well? Well, the drilling rig is usually the main component of drilling a well. The drilling rig sets up and the main hole is drilled using tungsten carbide bit drilling mud that is pumped down hole simultaneously while the bit is drilling so that the rock that is drilled through will surface. This hole is typically 5,000 to 7,000 feet and straight down, so vertically, and the well is turned horizontally. That is a new technology of horizontal drilling. It allows oil and gas companies to get the most out of every well. Steel casing is then dropped down the hole to prevent it from collapsing, but once the hole is cased, semen is pumped down the hole to seal the outside of the casing and the hole itself, which is going to help not allow any chemicals to escape the well. Once the hole is cased, a wellhead is installed and the fracking process may begin. So, we're going to look at some of the advantages that come along with hydraulic fracturing as a whole. The biggest advantage that really jumps out to a lot of people is the idea of the cleaner air. Because if we're using natural gas instead of coal for energy, we can decrease the amount of carbon dioxide that's being let off from the coal power plants, as well as eradicate mercury and ash emissions. Natural gas power plants are also a lot less expensive to build as opposed to a coal power plant, and they can also be built to size, so they can really fit the needs of whatever community or environment they're being placed. Moving forward, another big advantage is the access to more resources. Fracturing allows us to get the most oil and gas from the earth. As suppliers and supplies begin to dwindle because of the amount of backstock, if you will, that we have, it's very important that we find new ways to access the black gold and the gases that make our normal day-to-day lives possible. Going off of that, as we have our own backstock, if you will, our own reserves, it's also cutting down greatly on the amount of foreign dependency that we've been relying on very heavily over the last few years in America. With all the controversy going on with the Middle East right now, as far as ISIS and Saudi Arabia, it's really important that we have our own reserves and our own backup plans. So if, for God forbid, we do enter a World War III one day, we might not have access and we might not have the same ties to those foreign sources of oil and natural gas. So it's important that we have our own supplies and our own backup plan, our own backstock, just in case something is to happen. We're okay because we have our own domestic wells. Technology has also allowed a lot of the oil and natural gas companies within the industry to access more wells because of the locations of them. With majority of our oil lying in very inconvenient places, it's necessary for us to have a method of extracting the most oil and natural gas at one time. This is where horizontal drilling and fracturing are most effective. It used to be company men would go out and say, we're putting a well here, 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 and here. And they drill straight down. If they hit oil, cool. If not, they moved on to the next location. So this new technology that's kind of allowing us to find the oil before we actually have to go down and drill for it, as well as the technology that's come about with horizontal drilling, we're able to access a lot more oil and natural gas from within the earth that might not have been possible 10 years ago. Moving forward, the economy, especially out in West Texas, seeing a huge boost from the oil and natural gas industry because of the boom that has been going on over the last 4 to 6 years. Granted, it's in a low spot right now, but the prices of oil are beginning to rise, and companies are still booming. Companies are still lined up with more work than they know what to do with. But at the same time, some of these companies have began shutting their doors because the boom, the big boom, if you will, is over, which is very unfortunate. Companies such as Fracking International, they're a Canadian-based company that had offices out in Midland and Odessa, just recently shut their doors about a month and a half ago due to the decrease in demand that we are needing currently, as well as the price of oil falling. Another advantage is the case of water contamination. Drilling isn't anything new for America. It's merely just an advancement in technology that's uncovered the greatness that fracking can bring to the table. The water table is like greatly above the shells that are being tapped into, so really the only possible contamination would be a pipe breaking downhole, but really we don't really know what's going on downhole, so I say that with not a lot of confidence, but it is an advantage that's associated with hydraulic fracturing. Moving forward, we do have cleaner air, but there is still air pollution going on as far as disadvantages go, because aside from just, the normal day-to-day gas leaks from the pipes or well heads, natural gas has to be burned off at times. And that's either because it was in the extracted oil or it's unusable. So the gas that's being burned off can contain massive amounts of methane, which a lot of times it's over the EPA regulated 75 parts per million. As far as some studies have go, another disadvantage associated with this is groundwater contamination. Granted, I just said there's really no way to know. There have been fracking fluids found in water tables and aquifers, and I strongly believe that a big part of that is because most of these chemicals that are left downhole after the completion of the process, there's really no way to pull it back out, so there's nowhere else for it to really go. So whatever happens downhole, we'll never really know because we can't physically be downhole with it and seeing firsthand what's going on with it. The last big disadvantage that I really see with hydraulic fracturing, and it can be looked at in two different ways. It can be looked at as a disadvantage or an advantage, is the topic of earthquakes. So granted, we are drilling 5,000 to 7,000 feet, in most cases straight down before we're going to turn our well sideways. We do have to drill through some tectonic plates. Drilling through these plates can cause earthquakes, but a lot of researchers do believe that the small earthquakes that are associated with drilling wells and hydraulic fracturing as a whole, it's really just relieving the stress off of those plates that are preventing catastrophic events and catastrophic earthquakes in the future. So it's kind of a two-way street. You win and you lose. There's pros and cons associated with everything. So some final thoughts with this. Personally, I do view drilling environmentally safe, but just due to the advances in technology and the strict regulations and guidelines that have to be followed, and it's very regulated throughout companies as well as governmental organizations. Drilling is safe, in my opinion, and it's so much different than it was 10 years ago. That just the advances in technology have really brought hydraulic fracturing into the limelight, if you will. But the biggest downside, especially from being in an oilfield town for 18 years of my life, the biggest downside to drilling, in my personal opinion, is the impact on the homeowners. Because homes are depreciating due to the fact that a lot of these wells are basically being drilled in their backyards. Nobody really wants to buy a home that has an oil rig, 200 yards away. So that's probably the biggest downside to drilling and hydraulic fracturing as a whole. And as far as groundwater contamination from fracturing goes, I've already kind of stated my standpoint on it, is we really don't know what's going on downhole, but everything in life has pros and it has cons, and this is just a risk that we have to take to ensure that our normal day-to-day lives stay as normal as possible. And in the result that something catastrophic were to happen, then we just have to learn to adjust and adapt accordingly to that and kind of just build off whatever happens, because we really don't have another method that is beneficial and efficient to the oil and natural gas industry aside from hydraulic fracturing. So I really hope you learned something today about hydraulic fracturing and the good and the bad that it can bring to the table. Have a good day.